That could be the start of the film. Shall I start talking now?
Yeah.
We're rolling.
We're rolling.
Rolling down the road. There are two really important things about making perfume. Always put the lid back on and write everything down. I wanted to make a little film because it seems that YouTube is getting clogged up with so much verbal lard about making perfume that we're in danger of just coming to a halt and all intellectual thoughts going to be blocked up like arteries. So, hello, I'm Sarah McCartney and I make perfume at 4,160 Tuesdays, and this is our 10th birthday year. And we're still in business. I hope at the time of watching, this is still the case. And I get so many requests, how do I start to make perfume? And I generally say, well, I can't just tell you that. It takes ages. And then I thought, well, let's at least give it a go. Let's try to counteract some of the misinformation that's out there about how you start making perfume so that you don't have to unlearn it all and start all over again. Well, so sometimes I think that perfumery is just a good excuse to buy some decent stationery, but this is my formula book. Definitely it's mine, it's got my name in it. And these are some of my formulas. I write nice neat columns to make sure I can keep track of everything I do. This is important. Also, good pens. So what do you need? You need something to write it all down in before you do anything at all. I also like to sketch what I'm planning to do. I'm not a good artist, but this is how I drew both sides of clouds. That's the way that I think about constructing fragrances. This one is Ravenscourt. Now, you don't have to do it like that, but I find it really helpful. Here's a chypre I made called Oak Mossery. Again, possibly just an excuse to buy a sketchbook, but you've got to have some fun in your work, haven't you? What do you actually need? Well, you need a scale so that you can measure how much you put in by weight. This is important so you can recreate what you've done before. I have some beakers of various sizes. I just got them off eBay. Now, sometimes people are selling off lab equipment and it's not very expensive, but the good thing about this glass is that it doesn't absorb fragrance the way that, say, ordinary brown glass does. So this one's got patchouli in it. I will only ever put patchouli in this bottle, but your borosilicate glass, you can wash it in the dishwasher and it doesn't smell of perfume anymore. Okay, some of our teacups smell of perfume, but we'd have separate washes for the teacups and for the perfume. You need some materials. They arrive in various forms, and I'm going to show you what I do with some of my materials when they turn up. I'm going to make a perfume and I will let you know what's in it. Also, ethanol, perfumer's alcohol. I've got some trade-specific denatured alcohol 1, TSDA, which is, well, you have to have a license in the UK to be able to buy that. You have to be able to prove that you're actually using it to make perfume. But you can buy some ethanol perfumer's alcohol from Mistral. This company is not called Mistral Ni. The NI stands for Northern Ireland. It's Mistral Northern Ireland, Mistral NI. But you can order from them, and that ethanol is perfectly good for making perfume with. I started with it. I know many indie perfumers who started with it because you can't get a license until you've got a website to show that you're actually doing this for a living and you're not going to do anything silly with it like drinking it. I mean, it tastes terrible, but you can drink TSDA. You can't drink perfumer's alcohol. Or you can, but it doesn't stay there for very long. Well then, So what we're going to do, I'm going to dissolve some materials into ethanol so I can have them in a form I can use them to blend with. If I'm making a fragrance up, if I'm going to make it up in a big batch, if I'm going to do a test batch of 100 grams or something I know I'm going to use, I'll not necessarily dilute them in ethanol first. No, not me. But that's because I'm working in bigger quantities later for bigger projects. But when I'm experimenting, right, like this one again, this one is at 10% strength in ethanol. What we got here? Orange at 6%. So, I've got a little sample of Helichrysum Absolute here. And what I'm going to do, it's almost impossible not to do that, but you never sniff out, don't sniff out of the bottle. You're sort of allowed to sniff the lid, but you shouldn't be inhaling big amounts. What's best to do is to put it on a strip first. You want to test what it smells like. But it's sort of human nature to take the lid off a thing and smell it. It's following my own rules. I'm just going to put it back on again for a moment while I get the next piece of equipment out. So, the scale. I'm going to turn it on. And it's set to 0 because it automatically resets. But I'm going to measure the weight of this glass pipette and press tear because I actually want to use the pipette to measure how much this weighs, but I need to know exactly how much I've put in, so it's going to include the weight of the pipette.
Hang on a minute, we need to just remove those bottles by magic.
Right. Don't worry if that wasn't obvious. I'm going to put, see how much this weighs. If I put that in there, I've got 0.85 grams. I actually want 1 gram, so I'll put a little bit more in. I've done this before. Okay, so I have 1 gram of Helichrysum. I want to dilute it to 20%. No, I really don't want to do that. I want to make it up to 20 grams because I want to have it at 5% strength. So 1 gram out of 20, 5%. So now, this is why I've got my ethanol in a water bottle at the moment, because I can use it like this to weigh up to 20. So, when you're first doing this, you have to pay a lot more attention, but I've done it before. And now you see what I'm doing is just rinsing out the pipette. I'm going to use this pipette for Helichrysum. Give it a little stir. So I know that I've got exactly 1 gram of Helichrysum and the other 19 grams are ethanol. Then I'm going to put them in a thing. That thing specifically being a bottle. And at this point I realised, yeah, I've got the right one. You've got to make sure that you measure the right length. So, if you haven't done this before, you might need a funnel. It'd be typical if then I did this and poured it all over the desk, wouldn't it? But I've done it before. Yoga. And I'm using a 30ml bottle to put my 20 grams in, because if you try and fit 20 grams in a 20 gram bottle, it won't go. Ethanol doesn't weigh very much. So, we're in. I'm also going to write a label. Now, put the lid on, write everything down. So I'm going to write Helichrysum Absolute at 5%. I know it's in ethanol because I put everything in ethanol, and I'm going to date it. I don't remember which year it is. Right, so, and label that. So that's pretty easy. So now I'm going to be able to use this one. What else? I've got something else new here. I've been testing this particular ethyl vanillin, which is a very low carbon footprint produced ethyl vanillin, and it's produced in Norway. It's called Eurovanillin aromatic. Well, you might be a bit surprised first of all when you get ethyl vanillin. You send off, you're thinking it's going to come as a liquid like your essential oils, it turns out as a powder. What do you do with the powder? Well, sometimes they turn up dissolved in DPG just so that they're pourable. But I always buy mine as powder and then I put them in ethanol. They will turn up in DPG, not ethanol, so that they're not dangerous goods, so they can be sent through the post more easily. That's all. Right, so put this on there. I press tear to set it to 0. And out of my handy, useful box of things that I have acquired for doing perfumery, I have a very cool stainless steel shovel and spoon accoutrement. And I'm going to put 1 gram of ethyl vanillin in here. So you know, if we ever got raided, I'm sure I could explain, officer. And I've used a completely different beaker here. I'm not going to use the same beaker again. Obvs. I'll say that. I sincerely hope I used a different beaker. I didn't, did I? I blinking used the helichrysum beaker. Right. Don't make mistakes like I do. I'm going to use the beaker that hasn't had anything in it. Well, you know, never said it was perfect, did I? That's 1.33. Because there's nothing else been in it, I can shovel some out. Yeah, okay, we have a gram of ethyl vanillin. I'm going to have this at 5% as well, just because it has a habit of taking over. I would normally have things at 10 or 15%, but this one is quite... you'll suddenly, you put a little bit in and you suddenly find that everything's gone hyper sweet. Plus, this is 3 times stronger than normal vanillin. So I will just take it up to, quite noises it makes, 20 grams. I don't store the ethanol in this, but it means that I use far fewer pipettes if I'm using these squirty water bottles. There we go, 20. And I'll stir it with the other end to make sure there's none on there. And lo, thus it dissolves. So if I lose the odd drop while stirring out of 20 grams, it's not going to be significant. If you're being a bit whingy with it and doing tiny amounts, you lose 1 drop and you've changed the proportions. So it's fine. I mean, I know this is an expensive hobby, but if you're going to really do this properly, you have to do bigger amounts. You can't be doing 0.00 something of anything. It'll just evaporate, and then all your calculations will be horribly wrong. So don't try to get down to tiny amounts. You'll just lose accuracy. Don't confuse many decimal places with actual accuracy. Right. That one's too long. Yeah, I have many of these. This one. So, put the lid on, write everything down. I'm going to write it in brown just because it's ethyl vanillin and that pleases me. At 5% date, so I can just keep track. Okay. I need to get familiar with these materials. You need to get familiar with your materials before you start to put them together. It's like you get to know your friends before you introduce them all to each other. At least that's a very good idea. You don't want to put them all in the same room at once before you're quite sure that you know people really well, I would say. It's the same with perfumery materials. You get the first whiff and you think, oh yeah, I know that smell. But you don't really know how they're going to behave. So it sort of takes years to get to know them really well, but you can get to know them quite well over a couple of weeks. So, scent strips. You don't have to have your own branded scent strips. I have, because I've been doing this 10 years, but also I cut up watercolour paper to use as scent strips. Just get some from a shop and use that. So, do I want to see? I do want to see how much stronger this particular ethyl vanillin is than the one I normally use. I know what it smells like. It smells like particularly lovely ice cream, but you know, how's it going to perform? And I'm going to write it down, because you think you're going to remember what's on a strip, and then you know, you perhaps 8 in a row, and humans can remember about up to 6 things, and then out it goes. Short-term memory. So I'm going to call this one ethyl vanillin, because well, it's not very interesting to watch me write it down. It's important. Now I have a lovely thing from Albert Rouillet, very kind of them, to put scent strips in. So I'll stick it in there, but you know, you can use anything, photo clips, all kinds of stuff. Let's do another one for, lost it already, the helichrysum, which is also known as everlasting flower. I'm doing this because I have to decide whether or not I need to buy it and use it. So after 10 years still, I need to get familiar with materials, and I would do that by, first of all, testing them by themselves, and then testing them with other materials that I'm very familiar with and seeing what happens, and gradually, as I get to know it, incorporate it into a blend. If you're hoping that this is going to be, you know, a film to tell you not how to make perfume but how to make money really quickly, stop now. Because if you want to learn how to make perfume, so excuse me, helichrysum, it takes a while. If you're hoping that there's an instant way to make something that's going to be a bestseller and whoosh, everyone will buy it, actually making perfume is a lot easier than selling it. So that's a whole other story. So I've got my ethyl vanillin, I've got my helichrysum, and I could sort of go away and pretend I've come back half an hour later, because really I need to make notes now of how they smell, and then I need to make notes half an hour later of how they smell, and then I need to come back in 4 hours and see how they smell. So I'll promise you I'll do that later. What are we going to do next? Well, I'll make a blend and see how that turns out. So I have here a larger beaker, and for today I'm going to blend some materials which I have already diluted in ethanol. Sometimes I work at 100%, but often for experimenting I would be doing this, taking some materials which I already have and combining them and seeing what, you know, how they turn out. Now, okay, I have this material here which is called Fluffy Duvet, and Fluffy Duvet is a blend of musks and isoe super and something which feels as if it's surrounding you with soft clouds of lovely fragrance. And this is something which I use to experiment with. I'll tell you what's in it in the comments. So I've made this because I know that it makes everything sort of smell like a perfume. So I'm going to make a Fluffy Duvet, ethyl vanillin, helichrysum fragrance. And I'm going to write down exactly everything I do, because you've got to write down everything you do. I need to find somewhere to put it. There's fine, I've got long arms. So, what should we call it? For the moment, I'll call it Helichrysum ethyl vanillin fluffy duvet, so it's called Hevst. I'll think of something better. Right, ethyl vanillin and Helichrysum, although they're very different aromas, the interesting thing about balancing them is how relatively volatile or punchy or smooth, or is how do they feel, not just how they smell. So I'm going to put them in at the moment in equal quantities and see how I feel about that. But normally I would go to great lengths and take a great deal of time to work out how exactly they balance and how I feel. Also, I've just dissolved them. This is unusual. Excuse me. So, scale is on. I'm going to put 1 gram of my ethyl vanillin in here. This scale, by the way, it's not expensive. It is accurate, but I don't expect it to last very long. I've got a very good scale downstairs, which was about 40 times more expensive. And I expect it, I mean, it's already lasted 10 years. So these you know, I got it from eBay just for using upstairs when we used to run workshops here. Ethyl vanillin, I'm writing down at 5%, 1 gram. But yeah, just make sure with these scales that you always unplug them, because price reflects quality, I would say. So, right, hang on. Shouldn't do that. Yeah, just checking it was the ethyl vanillin I put in. It's all fine. Helichrysum. I press the tear button, resets it to 0. So I'm going with 1 gram of that as well. And this is because, knowing them as I do, okay, I've experienced these materials before. Let's face it, it's not the first time I've smelled them, although I haven't worked at the extra strong ethyl vanillin one before. So I've got equal amounts. Got a pen. Helichrysum at 5%. 1 gram. So, a little stir. And I won't leave it in a wide top beaker for very long because of course it can evaporate. Scent strip, just a small amount. I'll leave it just to evaporate and then have a waft. And in real life I would put it here and I would come back to it in half an hour and see how it's going. And it's very interesting because the first waft is all ethyl vanillin, and even just a few seconds later it smells much more balanced. Helichrysums. Describing perfumes is so difficult. You'll see it in words, but then it doesn't. Helichrysums are nice yellow flower. So 1 to 1 Helichrysum to ethyl vanillin. Put it in the thing. I have decided for the purposes of today that that's balanced enough. And I'm going to put some fluffy duvet in there to see how it then performs as a perfume, because you might just pick your favourite things and put them all together, but then you end up with a bit of a kind of dense sludge. You need to open it out and give these really intense materials some space to work in. That's where things like the hedione, isoe super and the musks come in. And genuinely, if you are just starting out, I would say you can get away with 20 materials that you really, really like, and hedione, isoe super and ethylene brassylate. Just start there. You genuinely do not need a wall full of materials before you have a go at starting perfumery. In fact, I would strongly recommend against it, because you just end up with, overwhelm. It's a noun now. You get weighed down by the amount of stuff you've got and never actually make a perfume. Nothing gets finished. So I am going to press tear and put 1 gram. I'm going to put 3 grams of this in. I hear our neighbours are drilling. It's just the kind of thing you need when you're making film. But, see, can't help sniffing stuff. 3 grams of fluffy duvet. I'm going to write that down as well. Fluffy duvet is an accord I made that just makes everything feel just so much more gentle and perfume-like. So I have got altogether 5 grams of fragrance, diluted. Because they're at different proportions, I've got a little bit of maths to do later, but if you don't like maths, by the way, and you want to do perfumery, get someone who does like maths to help you. Because you can get away with no chemistry. You absolutely cannot get away with no maths if you want to make perfume. I know, those little bottles went there. So I am going to leave this as my perfume for today. The other 3 rules, really, apart from putting the lid on and writing everything down, is balance everything carefully. Take the shortest route that you can get to making what you want. Given that, one very successful perfume was called Velviona by Helmut Lang, and it was made with 1 molecule, Velviona musk. That's been launched. There are other fragrances launched now that are just made with 1 single synthetic. You don't need 3 top, 3 middle and 3 base to make a perfume. You can use as few as you like. And helichrysum is a natural made up of hundreds of different chemical compounds by the plant. So you've already got hundreds of things in there. If you're using naturals, you really don't need many to make a fragrance. So, do I like it? Well, yes. Is it finished? Probably not, but I'll explore that later. So this is Heft, to be renamed afterwards, and I'm going to take this and put it into a little bottle because otherwise it will evaporate. And I'm going to put a label on it because we write everything down. I already put the lid on. So actually that was 2 of my rules, wasn't it? So it's the make it as simply as possible, get straight there if you can, balance everything beautifully. Oh, and actually we've already talked about the first one, is really, really, really get to know the materials before you start piling things in. So I will just call it for today HEVFD. I put the date on it, and I put the date in my book so that I can trace it back, so I know which page the formula is on when I need to find it. Later I'll transfer them to a spreadsheet, but I always, always, always write everything down. I've put the date on the bottle, I've put the date in the book, so that if I look at this, I can find the formula by going back to the right date in the book. Later I will put it on a spreadsheet, but do write everything down somewhere on paper, just in case, and probably copy it somewhere else as well. So that is a very short formula for a fragrance. I will tell you what's in Fluffy Duvet, and that is how I might go about making a first go at a fragrance, just to see what happens. A lot of perfumery is just to see what happens. Afterwards, I've got to run it through Perfumer's Little Helper to tell us what quantity I can use in a finished fragrance, which does our IFRA calculations for us. If I wanted to launch it, I would then have to do a stability test in the finished bottle, one of them. I would then have to get it a cosmetics product safety report for the UK, for the EU. I'll check for the US that it passes FDA regulations. There's much more to it than just making a fragrance, but if you're doing it for yourself and for fun, you can stop there. Questions, please ask questions. I go into a great deal more detail most of the time. If you would like to know more about how to make fragrances from somebody who's been doing it for 10 years and actually earns a living out of it and really genuinely does it from start to finish, as they say, I have a Patreon, which is at Scenthusiasm, patreon.com/Scenthusiasm, trademark ours. And every month I give you some formulas to work on. And we have a bit of a chat on Zoom, and there's a Q&A section, and there's a lot of past material now, a lot more films, a bit like this, which will help you to add to your knowledge of how to make fragrance. So there are some that you can just take and make up all in one go, but if you'd like to think about making perfume creatively in the future, how to bring your own ideas to life in scent, then it helps you to think through exactly how to go about planning these things, and it encourages you to learn the skills to go about doing that and putting it into place and making it happen. If you want to know exactly where to start, it's not by mixing, it's by just coming back to these things and smelling again, writing down what you think, and just getting to know them. Not so that you just recognise them on first glance and think, oh yeah, it smells like mushrooms, whatevs. But you start to learn how these things react with each other, how they get to know each other. It takes time, but if you'd like to start now, join us. That's your fan club, Arthur.
Let's have a smell.
Okay.
What you got?
We got. That's the.
Mmm. That's really, really, really nice.
Yeah.
It's quite spicy, that.
I think I'm going to have to buy some.
I think
Right.
so.
That's why they send me the samples. Like, Sarah, do you want to try some of this? Like, I don't know. How much is it?
Yeah, they've sold it. It's that's a main attraction, that is.
Yeah.
I think that you could just is this is the finished one?
It's not completely finished. That's the two of them
that's just
together. Let's test the one that's completely finished. Because, yeah, that's the thing. Is that naturals are basically, they've got top notes and mid notes and base notes. If you look at it like that.
I mean, it's almost. I would probably just wear that diluted helichrysum.
Yes, except I can't let you because your skin would go all balloony and, you know, you need some. Well, I suppose diluted. Yeah, let's think of it. Might get away with it.
You're meant to smell them with your mouth open, aren't you?
Oh, no, what you can do is go like this. You can go and breathe out, and you can actually smell in retronasal olfaction. Really. It's quite weird because then you can smell. You can like almost taste the. You can taste the ethyl vanilla.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah.
It's really nice.
What shall we call it? You can't call it hevt.
I think you should call it Slightly spicy.
That's nice. That's a, give me code name. Slicely spicy.
Slice of spice.
Slicely spitely. No.
Slightly
Slightly. Oh. Spicy. Yeah.
That's really, really nice.
Sprightly spicy. No.
It's really, really nice.
Yeah, it is. Not too bad. Not too bad. I mean, that's how. Yeah. Doesn't have to be complicated. That's the thing. Doesn't have to be blinky complicated. You don't need 14 million materials and an organ the size of a planet.
Well, Chanel No. 5's just made out of a tincture of No. 5, isn't it? Okay.
Of course it is. It's all made of flowers.